Hey everyone, welcome back to TowerGate. It is day 71, May the 13th, 2017. It is Saturday. Okay, well, this week, pretty much a lot of fallout over the Comey firing, and the media war continues between the administration and the liberals and the liberal media, and that's what it is. It's a media war that's going on right now, and in the midst of the media war, the left is getting a lot of things wrong. I'm going to point some things out to you here in just a moment some major media fails of this week. But before I do, I want to mention one other thing, which is the main topic of today's video, and that is that there is a very important story regarding the firing of James Comey and exactly how that was done and the timing and that sort of thing. There's something that a lot of people are not reporting on in the media that I'm going to inform you of and give us all, I should say, something to think about and why it's very important. But first, let's talk a little bit about the media wars. Within a couple days of the firing, the liberal media just went insane and started just posting up all kinds of stories, many of them false. I'm going to touch on just three of them that were big headline grabbers, all false. Right after, I think it was a day after the Comey firing, the Washington Post did a story where they said that the Deputy Attorney General, Rosenstein, had threatened to resign if they fired Comey. Of course, Mr. Rosenstein was then asked about this, and he said completely false. So the Washington Post, once again, reporting something from something they had inside sources, turned out to be false. Shame on you, Washington Post. Then we get the New York Times, right after the firing of Comey. They said that, in their story, that Comey was fired because the Trump administration found out that he was trying to get more funding for the Russia-Trump collusion investigation. And then, of course, Mr. Rosenstein also asked about that, and he said that story was false. Also, we learned that he went into the, actually it was McCabe, the assistant FBI director, who is no friend of Trump. Mr. McCabe went into the process to explain how the funding is done for these operations, and that the operation for Russia collusion, what have you, all these Russia investigations fully funded, and that there's no truth whatsoever to the fact that Trump fired Comey because he was asking for more money. And Trump didn't wanted to stop him from getting more money to continue the Russia investigations. New York Times reporting that, we now know from two sources, right from the horse's mouths actually, from Rosenstein and also from the assistant FBI director McCabe, that story is totally false. Then we get Jeffrey Toobin, who's on MSNBC, and he says that the Comey firing was grotesque because that Trump fired him because Trump was under investigation and he wanted to stop Comey from continuing the investigation. This is, of course, ridiculous. If there's an investigation going on with Donald Trump or anything else going on in the FBI, regardless of who the director is, that continues. I mean, it's the House and Senate Intelligence Committee right now that are holding hearings. Firing Comey doesn't stop that. Firing Comey doesn't stop the investigation that is or is not already ongoing. But we actually learned, specifically to what Jeffrey Toobin was saying on MSNBC, his point was, well, Trump fired Comey because Comey is running this operation to investigate Trump and Russia. Well, we actually learned from the hearings, Mr. Toobin, just a week ago out of James Comey's own mouth in the hearings, that there is no Trump-Russia investigation. There is no collusion investigation. We've heard it from the NSA. We've heard it from the CIA. We've heard it from Senator Turn In Your Guns, Mr. and Mrs. America Feinstein. We've heard that from everybody. There's not a single shred of evidence or information that there is an investigation of Trump-Russia collusion. It's a fairy tale. It doesn't exist, but it doesn't stop the liberal media, CNN, the Washington Post, the New York Times, MSNBC, and any of the left-wing pundits, doesn't stop them from continuing to push this narrative, despite the fact that it's completely false. And that's why I think it was funny that in Donald Trump's letter, when she fired Comey, he even mentioned it. Yeah, well, I appreciate you 3 times saying that I wasn't under investigation. That's just Trump's sense of humor, I think. But and also he knew that the letter would be reported in the press, so he wanted to get that point in, kind of a dig. So the Trump-Russia collusion thing is just insane, and that's why I'm not just going to spend very much time on it. It's just propaganda. It's just a media war going back and forth. There's much more on the other side that the liberal media doesn't want to report, and that's what I'm going to focus on mostly today. But we got one more beauty. Of course, Maxine Waters is the gift that just keeps on giving. Just Google Maxine Waters or go to YouTube and just, it's a highlight of stupidity. We ought to put out a Maxine Waters greatest hits video album or something. I mean, it's just, she's a disaster. So she's on MSNBC. She's being interviewed about the Comey firing, and she says that she's very upset and doesn't agree with Trump firing James Comey. But then the person questioning her or interviewing her talked about how she reacted back in November when Comey came out and reopened the investigation, at which time we have sound bites of Maxine Waters calling for his firing. So her response to that question when she was probed on that was, well, she says, I would have supported Hillary Clinton firing James Comey, but I don't support Donald Trump firing James Comey. So that's the logic of Maxine Waters. Again, she's a jewel, an absolute jewel. Okay, so now let me get to the main brunt of TowerGate today and the thing that everybody else is missing. And here is what everyone else is missing. The fact is, when Comey was fired, he found out about it when he was in California, apparently from watching a TV monitor. And then one of his aides actually told him when he first heard it, he thought it was a joke. It wasn't until after, actually I think it was in the intermission at this place where he was giving a speech where he was finally told, no, it's true, you really have been fired. So anyhow, the thing is, they had to know that Comey was going to be out in California giving a speech, and I think there's a very good reason why Comey was fired the way he was and the timing of it, making sure that Comey was not there in Washington in his office. Because what's not being reported in the mainstream media is what happened on the morning of the firing, when Trump sent the letter and announced that Comey had been fired. What happened that morning is that just prior to the announcement, they sent a security attachment. I'm not sure if they were military or if they were FBI or who they were, but we know that they sent a security detachment over to James Comey's office to basically secure it, to put armed guards at the door and to block James Comey's office to make sure that he couldn't get back, to destroy any evidence, to make sure that no one could take anything in or take anything out. So basically, when they fired Comey in the way they did it, and they made sure he wasn't there, and they made a very major effort to get over there that morning, either at the same time of the announcement or just prior to it, to secure his office, because James Comey's office is full of evidence. And if James Comey could have gotten back to Washington, my guess is he would have been doing some bleach bidding. James Comey would have been getting rid of some documents and some files, whether they're in physical folders, notes, and things like that. But since James Comey has been fired and he was locked out of his office and that office has been secured, you can bet that there is someone going through his office and his files and his desk looking for notes or anything else that would give them information. And it's also highly logical and likely that once Trump hires a new FBI director, as soon as he comes into former Comey's office, which will now be his office, he will be privy to all of Comey's files, all of Comey's folders, all of Comey's notes, all of the inside information that Comey has not wanted to give either of the committees in Congress investigating, the information he's not wanted to supply to them that they've been asking for, and also probably many other things that James Comey kept to himself. So let's talk about what sort of things that James Comey may have that he has not disclosed or that he's been sitting on. And that takes us to a story by Liberty Writers, which actually was a link they posted from the Gateway Pundit. I am going to provide for you the link to the original Gateway Pundit story. Now, this story actually goes back to March the 31st of 2017. On March 31st of 2017, Larry Klayman of Freedom Watch, representing a whistleblower named Montgomery, who was a former NSA and CIA contractor, turned over as a whistleblower to Larry Klayman 47 hard drives. 47 hard drives. And on those hard drives is information, not just information, but the actual texts of unmasked calls of hundreds and hundreds of people, including Trump, his campaign team, the Supreme Justice of the Supreme Court, as well as other judges, many politicians. In fact, it was 167 judges. Now, these are all documents that are on hard drives that are the texts from the phone calls or emails or conversations from all of these people, showing clearly, without a doubt, that there was surveillance on all these people. And as you read through the text and read the conversations, it's all political. It has nothing to do with intelligence. None of it whatsoever. It's just surveilling all these people to find out what they're talking about, who they're talking to. This is what it's all about. Now, on March the 31st of 2017, Larry Klayman, who was representing this whistleblower, Mr. Montgomery, turned over those 47 hard drives to James Comey. James Comey has the 47 hard drives, which show literally hundreds of thousands of pages of texts, conversations that were unmasked of Trump, Republican presidential candidates, 167 judges, and many, many other private citizens. All political, nothing to do with intelligence. These documents, I should say, and these hard drives did not come from the NSA or the FBI. They came from the CIA, which means that, just as I've been stating for many months now, that John Brennan, who is of course very closely associated with the Clintons, was the man running this particular operation. So it was the CIA and John Brennan and his people that were actually conducting this surveillance, for which there were no FISA warrants. Again, when you're talking about the FBI, they usually do things by the book. And Comey probably has a lot more information that we'll get from FISA warrants and things about what the FBI was doing. The NSA, of course, is typically the vehicle by which all the spying is done. They actually have the guys who actually do it. And then, of course, the Director of National Intelligence, Clapper, is over all of these people. But we haven't heard very much about the CIA. They've really been in the shadows throughout most of this that's been going on. We haven't heard much of Brennan. He's been pretty quiet. But I know he is supposed to do some testifying and some hearings coming up. But we do know that on March the 31st of 2017, Larry Klayman of Freedom Watch gave to James Comey 47 hard drives showing all these unmasked text conversations. All this information is in the office of James Comey. And that means that they're going to have this information. And if, in fact, they go through all this information and it is exactly what the whistleblower and Larry Klayman claim it is, then you have got a serious case of obstruction of justice against James Comey himself. Because this would show us that he had hard data proving everything that we've been talking about the surveillance. And he did not disclose it. He's been keeping it to himself. And this information is now going to be in the hands of the Trump administration, the new FBI director, whoever that is, and the Attorney General. they're now going to be able to review all this. And if this is true, and I believe it probably is, Larry Klayman's never been one to lie. Freedom Watch has done a great job of getting these types of documents. And so if this all turns out to be true, and I believe it very well could be, that's a smoking gun. You can't get a more smoking gun than the printed out documents of the unmasked conversations between judges, presidential candidates, Trump himself, and many other people. I mean, there is no more smoking gun than that. That is incredible. So there's a reason why they fired Comey the way they did, and there's a reason why that they secured his office and it's under armed guard. This is not being reported in hardly any media stories, but I happen to know that the office of James Comey has been guarded by armed guards since the morning of the firing. And I think I know why. There's another little thing that may be turned up in James Comey's office that would be quite embarrassing and possibly illegal. And that comes to us on an article which I'll provide the link for you again from ZeroHedge. Again, this is not a new story, but this is an older story that goes back a couple of months, but it's some more of that information that we might find in James Comey's office that he has failed to produce, that he should have produced. And basically what this story is that there is a Russian man who is being held in jail, and we're trying to extradite him from jail to the United States. He's in the Czech Republic. His name is Nikulin, Nikulin. That's his last name. He was arrested for hacking, alleged hacking, doing corporate type hacking into corporations and things like that. But he, while in jail, wrote a letter which was published in the Moscow Times, which he is claiming that FBI agents have visited him on 2 occasions to make him an offer. And what they're offering him, according to Mr. Nikulin, is that if he will take responsibility for being the person who hacked into the Hillary Clinton campaign, that they will give him money, U.S. citizenship, and a free apartment if he will take the fall for hacking into the Hillary Clinton campaign. Of course, he denies this. He says he wasn't the one who hacked Hillary Clinton or the DNC or anything else. I imagine he's not admitting to whether or not he's guilty of corporate hacking or hacking into corporations because he's currently in jail. He's going to be extradited, so I would assume his attorney doesn't want him commenting on that. So he's not commenting on the charge for what he's being held for. What he's actually saying is that the FBI is trying to cut a deal with him, maybe to come to him and say, hey, you're facing extradition. We're going to charge you for hacking all these corporations, and but we can get you out of it if you'll be willing to take responsibility for the hacking of the Hillary Clinton campaign of the DNC. Now, this information, of course, this is probably in James Comey's office. This is not something that's been talked about. But if, in fact, the FBI has made this man this offer, then that, again, is a bombshell. And it shows that Comey was an operative in the plot to take down Trump or to give legitimacy to the Russian hacking story. Now, the reason that Mr. Nikulin is such a target is because Mr. Nikulin, in his day job, deals with a lot of very high-end Russians and other Europeans, because what he does in his day job is he is a car salesman, and he sells not your ordinary cars. No, he sells high-end, very high-end, multi-million-dollar cars, Ferraris, Lamborghinis, things like that. So his clientele is a lot of very high-level oligarchs, owners of large corporations, super rich. The super rich class that can afford to buy multi-million-dollar high-end European sports cars. So that's his day job. But apparently, it's alleged he does a little hacking on the side. But it's because the FBI and intelligence people like to use people like Mr. Nuclein. Anyone like that has contacts with very high-level people in intelligence, government, corporate people, super wealthy billionaire people who have involvement in politics and things and such. The people who deal with them, they're tailors, they're maids, they're butlers, they're the guy who sells them their high-end cars. These are always targets of the intelligence communities because it's easy to get to these people because they are relatively low-end people who serve very high-end clients. So they have these relationships with these people, and a lot of times these are people you can get to talk. You can buy them off. You know, they don't make maybe a lot of money, so you know you can pay a butler or a maid. And these types of people have been sources for the intelligence agencies for many, many years. It's their number one target of people who they like to target. If you're the guy that's the tailor for the oligarch, you probably have conversations with him. He may say things to you that he wouldn't say to anyone else. The same with his cook, or the guy who cuts his lawn, or the guy who washes his car. So these are always targets, and this is how Mr. Nuclein fell into the radar of FBI intelligence. Is his association is selling high-end cars to a lot of these people. And whether they're trying to frame him and lay these charges on him, which I assume will be his defense in court, is to say, they're trying to frame me, they're trying to put these charges on me that I'm the hacker of these corporations, when in fact I didn't hack these corporations. What they're trying to do is frame me for this and then blackmail me and say, well, you know, we are going to charge you with this, but we'll drop the charges if you'll promise to admit to hacking into the Clinton campaign or whatever. So anyway, this information is held also in James Comey's office. So these are maybe two reasons, and probably many more reasons, why they put armed guards at James Comey's office on the morning that he was fired. It's because there's information in James Comey's office that could reveal a great deal about what we're focusing on here with TowerGate, the surveillance, as well as other things that Comey and the FBI have been involved in that are not totally above board. So anyway, these are things to watch, and I would expect that even though the media is not reporting on it, we are going to learn a great deal from whatever is recovered out of James Comey's office, because he probably has like all FBI directors, has that little secret drawer or file cabinet in his office with the lock on it where he keeps his most personal secret stuff that he keeps to himself. They're going to get into those file cabinets. They're going to get into that desk. They're going to get into his computer. They're going to get into everything. And James Comey was fired in such a way they made sure he couldn't get back to his office to bleach bit or delete or remove anything. So everything that was there in his office is there. It's secured. And I imagine this is going to lead to some incredible revelations. Very, very important. It's being overlooked. But I'm not overlooking it. So anyhow, that's what's going on with TowerGate today. It is day 71, March the 13th, 2017. We'll keep following this story, and we'll see what shoe drops next. You guys have a great weekend. Thank you for subscribing, watching my videos. Appreciate all the comments in the comment section. So that's what we got. You guys take care. We'll see you. Bye.